I recently set up my Sony A7c with a macro flash setup. I wanted to share it with you because there's a little bit of a minefield out there in terms of what to choose and use for this kind of setup. I hope you find it useful. Stick with me and I'm going to share a little bit more, the pros, the cons, how I'm getting on and how much the whole setup cost. Firstly, for the setup, I'm using a Sony A7c, as I mentioned, with the Sony FE 90mm 2.8 macro lens. I paired this all up with a Godox MF12 twin flash system and a remote controller. I also added some custom diffusers to the front of the twin flashes, which are working really, really well, and I highly recommend. In terms of the cost, the flash itself actually isn't too bad. The twin flashes with all the bits and pieces that you need was around £250. The commander was around £60, and the custom diffusers that I picked up were around £60 as well, all linked below. The real kicker in terms of cost was, of course, the lens. It's a Sony lens, it's around $850 RRP, which is a bit of a sum of money. You can pick it up a little bit cheaper, and of course always look secondhand because there's some really good deals out there as well. But I did make a video when I picked up this lens about how I'm actually using it in different situations. I think it's a really versatile lens, so if you want to check that out up here. You might be able to justify buying it a little bit more. Just to premise my overall opinion of the setup, I actually pulled the trigger and went for this because I'm using it for work purposes. I work in dentistry and I use this for dental photography. I wanted to really up my image quality in terms of the photos that I take at work and use my own camera. Hence the reason I set it all up. Now, saying that, I think this system could be replicated and used for any type of macro photography if you really, really want to get those fine details and up your images in terms of quality as well, especially if you're shooting in less than favourable lighting conditions, which you often are when you're taking a macro photo. Overall, I'm really happy with the setup and it works for what I need really, really well. The best addition, I think, in terms of customizing it were those custom diffusers, because in terms of what I use it for, especially when you're taking pictures of cosmetic dentistry, you are putting a lot of light into the scene, which is great because everything is very dark in the mouth. However, you don't want to over flood it and lose all of the details, and of course that's what you're trying to show off in terms of dentistry, is the details, and indeed in any kind of macro photo you don't want to just blast it with light. It did come with these diffusers in the box. They're okay actually, but these are much better, so for £60 I think they were kind of worth it. Usability pretty good. In terms of setting it up, wasn't too tricky. The commander just goes straight onto your hot shoe, and then you can add a filter adapter to whatever lens you're using. There was a whole selection in there, and you add the holder onto that, which is where the flashes themselves clip onto, and then they swing around, so you can actually have them positioned anywhere on this ring. And indeed, you could probably put loads more on. I've gone with 2 because that's all I need, but you could probably fit maybe 4 or 5 on there. Pretty good build quality from Godox. You can adjust the angles of these flashes pretty easily. I find it a little bit fiddly to assemble and disassemble on a regular basis. So what I actually do, I'm a little bit lazy, I just unscrew this whole thing, leave the twin flashes on it, I just kind of fold it up. I've got the ring on the back and I just leave that at work and then take the commander off and everything, because I need to use my camera for other purposes as well. I think if you wanted to put it in a backpack and kind of move around with it, you might need to take this apart because it is quite bulky. In terms of charge, I found it pretty good as well. These charge through USB-C, and the only one time then I found they did die on me was when I was shooting for a really long time. There was a full surgery day and I shot probably for over 6 hours on and off through that period, and unsurprisingly, they did die on me, but I could just pop them on charge. I've got a brick on the side and you can just keep the USB charging, but overall, they're pretty good. I like it a lot. It's pretty simple. There are a lot of setups in terms of for what I use it for, where they use what you call an owl bracket, which comes out, I'll add a little photo up here, and it brings the flashes slightly wider and to the side, so you get a more flattering light on your subject. But I've used one actually, I've borrowed one and tried it out, and although it does get better images, I use it for a mixture of macro photography and dentistry, so I want to get, as I said, those nice cosmetic shots, but also some more surgical shots with soft tissues where it doesn't really matter about that soft light. And overall, I don't really like using a bracket because I find it a bit cumbersome. But to get you started, this will serve you really, really well. You just need to get these two talking to the commander, which if you read the instruction booklet is relatively easy. I didn't do that, I just tried to work it out. A really nice feature is you've got a modelling light on the flashes themselves, which I find incredibly useful when framing the shot and trying to get the focus right, because it lights the scene. You just switch it on the side. The lights come on these, and then you can get everything in focus, everything framed, pull the trigger, and you're good to go. And my results I've been really, really happy with so far. Overall, a great macro setup, and it really allows you to capture those details in all their glory. So if you want to get into that, I would recommend this highly. If you do have any questions or any suggestions for me, indeed, drop them in the comments below. I'm fiddling a little bit with my settings. I will put up on a slide following this what I'm currently using, but it's subjective and it depends on what you want to capture and how you want to capture it. I like to capture things, I need everything in focus, front to back, so I shoot f22, f20, and then I will keep my shutter speed around 1/125th or 1/160th, and then I tend to fiddle a little bit with the ISO rather than too much with the power on the flashes. I use them at half power, and then I fiddle just slightly with the ISO. It doesn't take much to achieve what I need to, which I guess you could call a little bit lazy, but I find that works well for me and less faffing, because you actually need to be really reasonably quick with getting the shot. So again, totally depends what you're shooting, what conditions you're in, but overall a very good setup, and I am very impressed so far, and the world is your oyster in terms of macro photography. So, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one.